Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to do the knit stitch. The knit stitch and the purl stitch are the two basic stitches that pretty much comprise almost all knitting patterns, and in this video I'm only going to cover the knit stitch. We're going to look at the purl stitch in a different video. Now the knit stitch in and of itself is a very plain looking stitch when you look at it, but it can be made to look pretty using different colors or different types of yarn. I think it looks pretty just by itself. So let's get started. What I've done here is I've cast on 12 stitches using the knitted cast on technique. For this demonstration I'm using just size 9 double pointed needles and acrylic yarn. If you're not familiar with the knitted cast on technique, I've provided a link to that video tutorial so you can look at that and refresh your memory or learn that cast on. Because if you know the knitted cast on, then you pretty much know how to do a knit stitch. So to begin, use your right needle and insert it into the first stitch of the left needle through the front loop, not through the back loop, but through the front loop. Then you take your working yarn, wrap it around that right needle, and then using your index finger, guide the right needle through and down to bring that stitch out, and then with your left index finger, glide that stitch off the left needle. Don't be scared, just glide it off, because you've already moved that stitch onto the right needle. And so with knitting, that's what we're doing. We're moving the stitches from the left needle onto the right needle. So let's do that again. Insert, wrap it around, pull the stitch out, and drop. Now, one thing to be mindful of when you're doing this style of knitting is that you want your stitches on the left needle to be fairly close to the tip. If the stitches are all the way down towards the middle part of the needle, then when you're trying to, you do your stitch and you're trying to bring the stitch off that needle, it's going to be difficult, and each time you'll find yourself moving the stitches all the way up. On the other hand, if you do have the stitches at the top, then it actually becomes really easy to slide them off. In fact, as you keep doing this, you'll notice that the stitches will just glide off, and you won't need any effort to push them off. And so we just keep doing that all the way to the end, and that is the knit stitch. Now if you finish knitting this all the way to the end, and then you turn around and you do the same thing on the next row, that is knit all the way through, then the pattern that forms is called the garter stitch. And that's the stitch I showed you earlier in that little coaster piece that I showed you at the start of the video. And so the garter stitch is nothing but knit every single row. And it's, as I said earlier, it's a very simple stitch, doesn't take much effort, and once you've learned it, it'll come really easy to you. And the knit stitch is the basic stitch for all knitting, so getting that under your belt will really get your knitting fast and smooth and even. And so the stitch isn't much to look at. It's just these little sort of wavy things on the one side, and if you do garter stitch on both sides, then it's going to look like that. Here's another piece that I'd done. It was just a dishcloth using a variegated cotton yarn, and because the yarn is variegated, it gives this nice pretty pattern, but the stitch itself in the center part is a basic stitch. There's some pattern work going on along the edges, but the center part is just the knit stitch. And so as you can see, it looks very pretty, and I'm hoping that you give this knit stitch a try. If you enjoyed the video and would like to see more video tutorials, please subscribe to my channel, Knittycat's Knits. And thank you for watching the video. Happy knitting!